See, I've never had any inclinations towards socialism, nationalism, any other ism. My only ism is blackism in this perspective, that I want black folk, I see myself as an empowerment pragmatist, saying how do we get from where we need to go as quickly as possible to save ourselves from becoming a permanent underclass in this country by the year 2013.
And one of the ways that you say will not work is integration.
Okay, integration
well, black people think that integration is the way to go, and white folk have thought forever, liberal white folk have thought that integration is the way to go.
Oh, sure, if I was white too, because I really got you boxed in now. See, because that public policy, let me go back to that public policy again. At the turn of the century, that public policy was picked up by our organization, NAACP and Urban League. They saw it and they said, now we're going to come into existence and try to help black folk. What can we do? They were only permitted to help black folk in the context of the public policy. The public policy said black shall be a managed labor force. So the precepts of the Urban League and the NAACP was to help black folks find equal employment opportunity. See what I'm saying? And by the mid-1920s, Garvey and somebody said, hey, hold a second, how about some economics? And they said, no, that's out. And so we could never move blacks into starting their own businesses as a national public policy. So in the mid-90s...
Because again, the law stipulated that blacks cannot have businesses compete with whites or do anything that would bring profitability to blacks and take it away from whites.
Either through, they utilize legal and extra legal means to keep blacks out. In many cases where blacks, you see, nobody in this country was more qualified, for instance, raising tobacco and raising cotton than black folk, okay? And taking care of livestock. In many instances, they would even poison the blacks' livestock. They would burn his cotton, burn his wheat. So blacks could not, and that's why if you look in the back of the book, you see all kind of laws that says blacks should not compete with blacks in compete with whites in a whole number of things. But by the mid-60s, what happened in the middle of the civil rights movement there was that, contrary to what's popularly taught, black folk didn't get free in the mid-60s. What happened at that point in time was that that technology finally caught up with that labor need for blacks. And for the first time, the public policy said, hey, we no longer need blacks to open doors and shine shoes and wash dishes and mop floors. We got technology that can do it. And when that happened, something very profound happened again to the public policy. And what they had to do then was say, the white society said, aha, now we got to change this public policy. So what they said is that now that we no longer need blacks, what we have to do is go into a new period called benign neglect, okay, or callous indifference, or out of sight, out of mind. So then they said, so Monahan came up with a policy by the late 60s saying, or early 70s saying, it's time for us to move from focusing on black folk to focus on Indians, Hispanics, and women. But they also said what we must do in our new public policy is, first of all, make sure that all of our public policies at every level express no guilt for what has happened to black folk. Point one is pivotally important. Point two is that we show no responsibility or obligation to help blacks in any manner. Okay? Which means affirmative action and anything else. Point three is to make sure nothing is done to transfer that wealth that I told you, that 100% wealth on one side of the sheet over to blacks, that never occurs. And that is what we've been locked into from the mid-60s up to today.
But once again, the civil rights movement focused on integration. The civil rights movement said if we can move into their neighborhoods, if we can go to schools with them, if we can sit at the same lunch counters with them, then we'll make the breakthroughs we need to make to end this codified evil called racism.
Because we had been pursuing, since that original mandate in 1638 excluded us, saying black folks should never enjoy the fruits of white society, that's been locked in our mind to enjoy the fruits of white society. So we want to integrate. But nobody else in this country ever wanted to integrate. What they want to do is assimilate. They've always had the option to assimilate by the second generation.
The difference being?
The difference being that they can move in and blend in. They can intermarry and blend in, and by the second generation you can't tell who's who. Or they can have the option of setting up a little Haiti, or a little Havana, or a little Cuba, or a little whatever you want, or a little Italy. But black folks want to integrate, and integrate killed us for a number of reasons. I'll try to get these points in very quickly. One, first of all, integration is nothing but a new modified form of segregation. Only thing now, you've broken your people down to a smaller unit, and you defied the first premise of power, which is you no longer have numerical power. Now you're in little small groups all around large urban areas. That's point one that's going to knock our brains out. Point two is that the white society maintains what we call a racial balance, or what we call a tipping point, which says that I will accept black folks primarily at 0, but I would tolerate them anywhere from up to 5 to 8% of any given population. But the minute they cross that 5 to 8% population, it is no longer integration, it's now invasion, and I must take action against it. So I'll either take my kids out of school, put my house up for sale, move my business to the suburbs, or I will resign from the organization, okay? Because I'm not going to let him get that dominance over me. Third thing that immigration is done for you, it destroyed all your major businesses because they used the highway system to drive expressways right down the center of every black community in this country. And where blacks used to have major business opportunities in the country, they were all destroyed. 4, we find that also we got a major capital drain. There's a basic rule in economics which says you must spend your money in your community and make it bounce 8 to 12 times before it leaves. Black money never bounced 1 time. Black folk have approximately $300 billion passing through our hands annually.
Right.
That money doesn't even bounce in our communities.
Transform weakness into power by gathering others to play with cards that your group deals. Your group. Chapter 7, we're covering practicing group politics. Modern social scientists, philosophers, and politicians define politics in whatever ways suit their purposes or fancies. In espousing their views, they most often define politics as the part of compromise or the art of the possible. However, for our purpose, these definitions are meaningless. They say nothing about the real nature of politics and the rules of the game. In the real world, politics can be best defined as the process that decides who gets what material benefits out of life. Politics is about power. It decides who has food, income, education, shelter, health, heat, and healthcare. It allows the nation's political elite and overclass to play gatekeeper. They dispense resources on a trickle-down basis. Those who are the closest to them at the top get the lion's share first. Those who are on the bottom get the least and the last. In a competitive society, there's little, if any, incentive to look out for an underdog group. Blacks are the out group, and they can rest assured that the overclass will make all the political decisions in their own best interest rather than in the interest of Black Americans. The rules of the game. Black Americans have always been excluded from playing politics by the official rules of the game. Every time we sought to play by the rules changed or the game extended before we had a chance to play. Therefore, rather than continuing to be like a dog chasing his tail, we need to simply step back and look outside of the box. In the action steps outlined in this chapter, we suggest ways in which we should alter our behavior or change the accepted rules of politics. But in all instances, we must adhere to the fundamental rule of all politics, quid pro quo. It means something for something. Or at the more familiar level, it means you scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. Those who invest their time, energy, and resources in support of a political cause, candidate, or political party expect to be compensated in a manner that is equal to their investment. Happy Monday and welcome back to On the Shoulders of Giants. I am Joseph Ward, and we are continuing our reading and reviewing of Dr. Claude Anderson's book, Powernomics, the National Plan to Empower Black America. And in this chapter, we are covering chapter 7, Practicing Group Politics. This chapter is needed. It's needed. In my adult life, being able to observe the political process, but also being able to observe how Black Americans engage in the political process, the more I've learned, the more I've become disheartened. We don't know how to vote. I think one of the problems is how we were conditioned to engage in politics from the beginning. We are conditioned to be engaged in politics throughout school systems. I know I was, through the school system. So I'm giving my experience. If your experience is similar, then we have similar experiences, but I'm giving it my experience. So in elementary school, when it came to electing the student government, the class president, and all of the positions that were picked, it was a popularity contest. Middle school, student government, for all the positions that were picked, a popularity contest. High school, all the positions that are picked, popularity contest. College, follow suit. all the positions that are picked for student government, popularity contest. So if this is how I've been conditioned throughout my formal schooling years, if this is how I have been conditioned to engage in politics, why would I change? Why would there be anything different? Why would I engage in politics on a practical level? I was never really taught civics. I was never taught civics at all. I had to learn civics on my own. So we're never really taught civics. And we're conditioned to engage in the political process. The way that we're conditioned to engage in this political process is not feasible as far as for us being able to get our desired outcomes or our intended outcomes for voting for a specific purpose, a person, purpose, or cause. I'm not getting what I need, but I'm going to continue to vote this way because this is how we're supposed to vote, because there's always a hero and a villain, and we should never vote for the villain. But the problem is we don't know how to tell who the hero is, and we don't know how to tell who the villain is because we're just only going off the popularity contest, specifically for Black people in America who are voting as adults. We're dumb. The way we vote is dumb. It's Democrat or bust. That's crazy. We know we never get what we want. We never get what we need, but we continue to vote Democrat. They need to be working for our votes. So these are things that we're getting into: the quid pro quo, something for something. What am I getting for my vote? If I'm not getting anything for my vote, why am I giving you my vote? But we have to learn how to get what we need with our vote because we already vote as a block. 90% or more of Black America votes one way. We have to learn how to use that power. So let's get back into it. Page 187, the first chapter on page 187. The worst part of this picture is that Black America has not demanded a quid pro quo relationship. And explaining how Cuban refugees in Miami were able to economically and politically surpass and subordinate Blacks in Miami within 1 decade. A Cuban told me, we are not like Black people who always march, demonstrate, then beg. We demand what we want. Blacks have petitioned for freedom and equality, but never demanded quid pro quo compensation for their political loyalty, labor, patriotism, or cultural contributions. What are we doing? We're literally just giving away votes. We don't understand politics. We think we do, but we don't. We are engaged in the political process, but we are engaged in the political process from a standpoint of we are the people who help the Democrats. That's it. We're the Democrats' bitches. Black America has become the Democrats' bitches. They are our pimps, and we are their bitches. That's the problem. We have to change the way we see ourselves in the political process, and we have to change the way we engage in the political process. Forget the feelings, put all the feelings to the side, put all the emotions, put all the other crazy stuff to the side. Is what we're doing working? The answer is a resounding no. Why? Because we never get anything for our votes. We never do. But we're going to continue to go down the same path because we literally think that the Democrats are the good guys, the Republicans are the bad guys, so we have to align ourselves, not understanding that neither one of these parties have our best interest. Neither party have Black America's best interest. Black America is only labor to these classes, to both political parties, or even to the white political structure or the white supremacy structure. We are labor to them. We're not real human beings. So page 188. So political accommodation is obsolete. Playing American politics based upon the needs and interests of other groups is playing politics just to play. We're always looking out for other people and never looking out for ourselves. Politics is economic Darwinism. It is rooted in selfish economic aims. Players compete to protect what they have or for further gains. Those who operate from altruistic feelings about helping everyone may play the game, but they will not win. Let me read that again. Those who operate from altruistic feelings about helping everyone may play the game, but they will not win. And we look, no other groups in this country take more L's than black people. Booker T. Washington was a pro-black leader. Washington's greatest weakness was his dream of being the great accommodator between blacks and whites. He destroyed Black America's hopes of being an independent and competitive people by telling whites at the Atlanta Fair in 1896 that blacks were the most patient, faithful, and law-abiding and unresentful people that the world has ever seen. The white society rewarded Washington and black Americans for their humble, meek, compassionate, and non-competitive attitudes by subjecting them to another 60 years of Jim Crow slavery. Like Dr. John Henry Clark says, yeah, the meek shall inherit the earth, but then the strong will inherit the meek. What world do we think we live in? Wake up, damn it. Wake up and smell the coffee. We need to get our black heads out of our black asses. What world do we think we live in? Forget the ideal world that you think we should live in. What world do we actually live in? How do you make an ideal world real when you're not even serious about the world that you live in? You're not even being realistic about the world that you live in. You cannot get to the ideal if you don't fix the real. It doesn't work like that. Nobody cares what you want just because you're begging for. How long have black people in this country been begging, marching, demonstrating, protesting, writing speeches, poems, all of that? Nobody give a damn about your poem. Poems have never changed anything for us. Speeches have never changed anything for us. I was watching a video last week, and it was an African nation, and all the things that's going on in West Africa with the ECOWAS and Niger and all those things going on over there. And somebody gave a grand speech. Guess what? Nothing really changed. Nothing real changed. Let's say that. Nothing real changed because of the speech. It was a nice speech. It got people stirred up, but it didn't get people stirred up to take proper action to correct the situation. Stop playing around. Stop playing. We need to stop playing politics and learn how to learn the rules of the game so we can manipulate the game for our own gain. Black elected officials cannot challenge the status quo by creating alliances with competing groups. If you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of nobody else. Alliances must be based on common objectives and benefits. Black civil rights organizations cannot help Black Americans by subordinating Black interests and historical needs to ethnic and language groups who are higher in order of acceptance. Several Hispanic and Korean immigrants told me that they entered this country above Black people and were advised even before they got here to avoid association with Blacks. Ethnic immigrants know Blacks were slaves, but they do not understand the legacies of slavery that still handicap Black people. What they do understand is that regardless of how they may fare, they may fall, they will never sink as low as Black people. Black Americans' humble, non-competitive attitude toward politics and business reinforce the popular image of Blacks as weak and undemanding and allow others to take advantage of them. As the farmer said when asked how he planned to get the crops to market, it's easy. The willingest jackass will have to pull the heaviest load. The willingest jackass will have to pull the heaviest load. The willingest jackass will have to pull the heaviest load. One more time. The willingest jackass will have to pull the heaviest load. And we are the willingest jackasses. For centuries, Black Americans have been the willingest jackass in America. Now that role must change. We got to stop being jackasses. We have to stop being the group of people who are willing to carry the burdens of all of America on our back while not even being able to reverse our burdens. How dumb is that? How dumb is that? We got to do better. That's insane. Doc, we talked about how insane we are when we read and reviewed the compensatory code. This is reinforcement of it. It's more information to show the insanity that we have. We literally put other people's groups' interest above our own. If I'm another group of people, there's no way I'm aligning myself with Black America. Why would I align myself with Black America? What can you do for me? Nothing. You can't help me. You can't help me do anything. We've come in this country. If I'm not one of these other groups, I'm thinking we've come in this country after you, and we're ahead of you. How can you help us? What are you going to help us do? What? March, demonstrate? We don't need to do that. We don't need to do that. We got real political power because, hey, guess what? We operate as a group. Black America. That has to be our mindset. We, whether you keep saying it, whether you like it or not, you're a part of a team that's losing. Whether you want to participate in the game or not, you're a part of a team that's losing. So Dr. Anderson gives us 12 political action steps that we can use and strategies to play the game and create political conditions for economic success, right? So political action step number 1, promote group self-interest and use political acts to empower Black America. In any racial contest, a group that has no self-interest cannot successfully compete or win. Black Americans are inextricably bound together by many forces and factors that present the presence of racism, African heritage, slavery, emancipation, integration, and overall victimization. Yet, as a race, we continue to promote the political agenda of the majority society and its ethnic subgroups rather than our own. We can neither compete nor win as integrated do-gooders. Racial solidarity is a prerequisite for political empowerment and group-based competitiveness. Black America should prioritize and commit to taking care of itself before seeking to take care of the world. Carter G. Woodson, in his 1936 book, The Miseducation of the Negro, urged Black people to support their own people first. He said, there was nothing wrong with Blacks being kind, generous, concerning, forgiving, and compassionate towards all people, but begin with your own people first. Over a half century later, we have still not learned to place our own group interest first. As long as other groups remain primarily interested in their prospective groups and placing their interests first, Black people must be equally as protective and interested in our own group. If we're not interested in fixing our problems and building ourselves up first, how the hell can we even be a competent ally to anybody else? It's crazy. It's crazy to continue to give our time, effort, energy, resources, blood, sweat, and tears to other groups for an idea that is not going to happen. These other groups are gaslighting us and telling us whatever we need to hear so we can continue to give up our energy, time, wealth, resources, and everything that we have to those other groups, enriching them while we are either staying stagnant or declining. It doesn't make sense. How can we progress if we're not even serious about helping ourselves? Once again, going back to the airplane analogy, we're the people on the airplane. The airplane is going down. The airplane is in trouble. All of the oxygen masks have fallen out of the ceiling. The specific instructions were given before we took off that if your oxygen mask comes down, put your mask on first before you go help anybody else. Nope. Black America said, no, we cannot do that. We cannot put our mask on first before we help anybody else. So the plane is going down. Black America is running up and down the aisle of the plane, helping everybody else put their mask on until we get to the point to where we can't breathe anymore. And now we're looking at everybody else to give us a mask, but nobody's willing to give us a mask. And we keep doing it. We keep doing it. We don't care about anything other than feeling good or looking good because we so badly want to be on the right side of history. All right, political action step number 2, challenge immigration laws and public policies that have forced Black people to become this nation's only non-immigrant and permanent minority. Blacks must mobilize at the grassroots level and challenged this nation's immigrant policies, which forced them to be the only planned permanent involuntary minority in a social democracy that operates on the premise that the majority will win and rule and the minority will lose and be ruled. Wealth and power follow the numbers. The country was founded on the principles of liberty, opportunity, and the reward for achievement so long as you were white or could reasonably be accepted as white. In the mid-1700s, blacks made up approximately 34% of the total population. After that ratification of the U.S. Constitution, one of the first acts of the new Congress was to enact the 1790 naturalization law that restricted citizens to free white persons. Immigration laws have controlled black population numbers. Over the last 200 years, ethnic immigrants have bumped blacks from employment, business, education, and political opportunities and used them as a buffer against hate groups. Layer after layer of ethnic immigrants received the advantage of the fruits of black people's labor and consumer markets. Black Americans served as a safety net, assuring every ethnic group that they could never fail any lower than the highest black person. But each immigrant group's arrival brought additional harsh conditions for blacks. Throughout most of the 19th and 20th centuries, black leaders were aware of the negative impact immigrants had on black Americans and petitioned the federal government to halt open immigration until the nation had rendered justice to black Americans. Now, in the mid-1960s, however, black leaders made two dramatic reversals that were to have lasting effects on blacks and from which they would never recover. First, black leaders abandoned black people and reversed the commitment of civil rights from blacks to humanitarianism, support for all struggling people. Secondly, they not only dropped their opposition to immigration, but began to support it. So we don't understand the numbers game. We don't understand the group thing. Say it again. In a democracy, the majority rules. In a democracy, the majority rules. None of y'all are curious as to how our numbers stay stagnant over all these years, how we stay at around between 12 and 14% of the population. Like my whole life, 39 years, we've only been between 12 to 14% of the population. Nobody's ever been curious about that. Why everybody's population numbers are increasing and ours are stagnant or decreasing. Nobody ever thought about that. All these babies we making, all these people getting pregnant, and our numbers are staying stagnant or decreasing. Something is wrong with that. But also, we see other immigrants the same way we see ourselves. Black people have been conditioned to believe that it is our job to be the protectors and the champions of all other groups of people. Even later in this chapter, Dr. Anderson talks about how Black people, we have to either remove ourselves from this minority label or remove others from this minority label, because other people are getting the label, but also getting the benefits and the treatments that Black Americans should have because of our legacy of white supremacy and slavery in this country. And no other groups have experienced what our ancestors have experienced, but all those other groups are benefiting from what our ancestors experienced. And it's a problem with that. It's a problem that we are placed under this category of minority, but even in this category, we are the minority in this category because we're still getting crumbs off the table. And in addition to that, we are supporting immigration laws that in effect hurt us. Other groups, the Hispanic groups and the Asian groups, have come to America and passed us. Well, Hispanics have passed us in population. The Asians are coming for us. I'm telling y'all, it's a numbers game. But the Asians have passed us in economics, right? So also look at immigration. Black people who immigrate from certain Black countries are not allowed in America, but Asians and Europeans are allowed. Even Arabs are allowed in this country, but Blacks from specific nations are not allowed in this country. We know The number one nation the number one nation of black people who are not allowed in America is in abundance is Haitians. But we look at immigrants as allies, as people we should help. And the immigrants don't look at us as allies and people that they should help. The race thing is a competition, whether you like it or not. That's just how it gets down. That's how it happens. That's how it goes. Immigration is about people increasing their numbers. It's also about people coming in to get information and resources and things that they can get and taking it back to their people. Everybody plays the race game the way it's supposed to be played as a race, except us. So political action step number 3, using vertical integration in politics like the old political ward system to deliver services and direct benefits to black communities. A form of vertical integration must be applied to politics in order to position black Americans to gain access to higher socioeconomic ground. Vertical integration will give black Americans a vertical structure or channel that allows public office holders to deliver constituency services directly to black voters. The old ward type system is needed. Early in history, the word ward meant someone who was to be protected. To protect voters, cities were divided into wards that public officials could easily identify and guard. The ward system was a political division of a city as well as a political tool and patronage system. To a large degree, the ward system became unpopular and was terminated in northeastern urban cities in the early 1940s in response to the developing black civil rights movement. For centuries, European ethnic groups used ward politics and political machinery to empower themselves. Both gave the ethnic groups effective mechanisms for maintaining group unity, political spoils, lines of communication, voter involvement, and a device to enforce political accountability. Black America has never had such a political system or machinery. So being able to put ourselves in groups and aggregate all of the resources that we have in these groups, but also the individual groups aggregate the resources that they have in these individual groups, and then the collective groups aggregate their resources, aggregate everything that gives us political power. But we have to use our power responsibly. With great power comes with great responsibility, but we also have to have the critical thinking and the know-how about the power that we have, the political power that we have. We do have political power. We just waste it. We throw away our political power. Our political power has at this time, it's potential energy. It's potential energy on one hand, as far as for us being able to use our political power for ourselves, but it's wasted energy on another hand because we waste our political energy and our political power on the Democrats because for some reason we created a loyalty to a group that doesn't give a damn about us. Like the old ethnic wards, black wards can be built around 1, maintaining family and community ties. 2, pooling and sharing resources. 3, exercising competitive interest in the marketplace. And 4, mutual obligation between black people. Ward systems can create vertical links between public office holders and black voters for the delivery of services. All right. Number 4. Political action step number 4, support a national network of black research institutes to collect data, advocate for and craft group-based how to win political strategies. Okay. So in developing the Black Political Power Toolkit, Black America needs a national network of public policy institutes that want to work toward the Powernomics vision. To form a network, each participating organization would develop or contribute a particular area of expertise. They would work together to do research, lobby, and distribute information to Black America. The network should be totally committed to increasing wealth, income, and power resources in Black America. Components of this network can structure themselves as voluntary associates, civic groups, educational, or a number of other type of organizations. To maximize their effect in communities, the local think tanks should affiliate with Black colleges, business organizations, and churches that also subscribe to the Powernomics vision. Together and separately, they could function as a vital part of the national network, using newsletters, using newsletters, the internet, press releases, conferences, seminars, and public hearings to educate, inform, and influence Black voters and Black public officials. The principal goal of Black American National Intellectual Network are to: 1, provide research to Black public officials; 2, help the 20 most populated Black communities to develop plans to rebuild communities and to practice group politics and economics; 3, bring about economic and political self-sufficiency and competitiveness; 4, apply the research principles and strategies of the Powernomics National Plan to develop prospective solutions for Black America; 5, establish new forms of institutional leadership; 6, link knowledge to power by bringing together scholars, strategists, and researchers; 7, establish an electronic information network within Black America; 8, develop public policies and programs to aggregate capital and stimulate vertically integrated Black-owned enterprises within Black communities; 9, promote group accountability, unity, and optimism. So creating these national networks, think tanks and things, networks that can gather information, do research, do all these things for us, the intellectual side. But the intellectual side and the academic side has to be put in. All the information that we are getting from these intellectuals has to be put into action. Faith without works is dead. Knowledge is not power. Applied knowledge is power. Applied knowledge is power. Knowledge in itself is not power. Well, I think the Black conscious community should understand that by now. The Black conscious community should understand that acquiring knowledge of self is not enough. How do I apply this acquired knowledge of self? Okay, I can tell you all of the pharaohs of the 18th dynasty, but I can barely pay my rent. That's not adding up. I can give you every name of every Black person in Black history who has contributed significantly, but I can't pay my rent. That's not adding up. I don't have access to wealth or resources. I don't have access to things that can actually help me utilize this information I have. It's not adding up. I'm not saying don't acquire the information. I am an educator. I am a historian. I am an advocate for acquiring all of the knowledge you can. But some of the knowledge that you acquire should be know-how. It should be know-how on how to apply the knowledge that you have acquired. If you're not applying the knowledge that you acquired, who cares that you have the knowledge? It's not valuable. Political action step number 5, create a daily national print and electronic news talk network that offers Black political perspectives on domestic and international events. The economic aspects of this action step were explained in chapter 6. However, the political purpose is important to isolate and discuss. The saying information is power sounds good. However, information in and of itself is not power. Information represents only the potential for power. Just like the power in a light bulb is realized only when it is connected to a circuit, information lacks power until it is connected into a network and used by its owner. What I just got through explaining, right? If we as Black Americans are serious about acquiring power, we must have a national network for information and news. We need to communicate information, strategies, and ideas that can connect the group and establish the potential for unity and consistency of message. A Black communication network will increase group power, especially when the information being disseminated is linked successfully to the group's visions and goals. Now, in today's world, we have access to networks to get information out, but most of the networks that we use, like this YouTube, we don't own. So he is suggesting that we use networks like YouTube, but we need to have our own networks and our own structures that we created for ourselves and that we use for ourselves to connect information and disseminate information. Something that can truly counter the narratives. We need to corner the market on the internet, but we also need to corner the market as far as radio stations, news stations, newspapers, traditional print versus modern. Traditional media versus modern media. We need to corner the market on all of them. in that piece, he was one of the things he talked about was the social media age, because remember, this book was written in 2001. So this was in the beginning of the social media age, right? And he talked about how Black people need to corner the market in the social media age. So we won't be used to build up other people's media platforms, and you know, we don't have any power or any access to these platforms as far as being able to make real decisions. And because of that, excuse me, because of our lack of real power, the platforms use us to build themselves up, and then they step on us. Excuse me. They step on us, they eliminate us, they downgrade us, they degrade us, they talk about us, they kick us off, they treat us bad. TikTok, all these other platforms that were used by Black people, Black culture, and everything. We keep giving it up. Black people will see a potential opportunity to be like white people and jump on it. You have to remember, a part of the conditioning of the Black person in America is to want, like Dr. Anderson said in the clip earlier, we want what white people want. We want their status. We want their positions, because we have been conditioned to think that white people are the pinnacle of success, are the pinnacle of what humanity is supposed to be. And that is what we should aspire to, which is wrong. We have all these networks, but we have platforms, I would say. We have platforms, but we don't have networks. And it's, as somebody who has a podcast network, I'm telling you, it is difficult to do that. It's difficult to build the networks. It's difficult to get the stuff up and running, but that doesn't mean we don't do it. So we need to reevaluate how we disseminate our information, and we need to look more towards the aggregation of our resources. Political action step number 6: establish national political debates, issue forms and conventions for politicians seeking Black votes. All right. Black Americans must look all candidates for public office and current elected officials into, Black Americans must lock all candidates for public office and current elected officials into quid pro quo contracts with Black communities. Ever since America's founding, public debates have constituted a major part of the election process, right? Debates are used as settings for candidates to present themselves and their ideas to the public. They give the public a chance to get to know the candidates and seek their support for issues and projects. However, most debates from the Lincoln versus Douglas debate of the 1850s to the local modern day town hall debates avoid many serious discussions of Black issues. For Black Americans to join the political discourse and to wield political power, we must require all political candidates for high office to participate in Black hosted national and local debates, town hall meetings, and other public forums to respond to questions about their commitment to Black empowerment issues. This practice would do several things. First, it would make Black America a part of the political process in a meaningful way. Second, it will bring respect to Black people and their voting power. Third, it would allow Blacks to regain some control over politics within individual Black neighborhoods. Fourth, Black America would have a chance to interact with candidates on key issues and extract irrevocable arguments between the candidates and Black America. Irrevocable agreements between the candidates in Black America. And last, the publicized national debates would stop candidates for public office from taking Black Americans for granted by saying one thing to Blacks, then saying something totally different to another group or community about the same issue. The biggest benefit of national debates and forums is that they would expose and undermine Blacks who sell influence as Black leaders for personal gain and reward. Candidates who have nothing to offer Blacks will not likely come into Black communities. And if they don't come into our communities and participate in the political events, then we will know they don't deserve our vote. So having structured debates, town hall meetings, forums, all these things, and this is something that candidates have to come to, because if you don't come to this, you don't get the black vote. Now, as we stand right now, no elected official candidates have to do any of that, because especially if you're a Democrat, just be Democrat and have your rhetoric be liberal. Be liberal. You don't have to mean any of it. Just have your rhetoric be liberal and run as a Democrat, and black people gonna support you. Joe Biden has a history. Joe Biden has a history of destabilizing black communities through political practices. But black people will fight tooth and nail to tell you why we should have voted for Joe Biden. I'm not saying Donald Trump was a better candidate. I'm saying throw both their asses away. Withhold your vote. If neither candidate can give you what you need, withhold the vote. But what Dr. Anderson is talking about in this political action step is us having our power, of us having our structure, us voting as a block, as a group, and people understanding that, hey, if we want this 90% black vote, we have to give black people what they need. We have to give them what they want. We have to give them what they demanded. We're not asking for anything. We're demanding that you give this to us. And if you cannot give this to us, you will not get our votes. We will withhold our vote. A lot of black people don't understand that withholding your vote is not giving your vote to the other candidate. Nobody gets the damn vote. Nobody gets the damn vote. So black people want us to vote as a block without voting as a block, while we vote as a block without voting as a block. Because our people have told me plenty of times that, hey, if you don't vote for this candidate, then you are trying to help the other side win. I didn't know we was on damn sides. I didn't know we chose sides. I didn't know we was on sides. I didn't know black people were obligated to the Democratic Party. I didn't know I was obligated as a black man to consistently give up my vote to the Democratic Party because they're Democrats. So Dr. Anderson said, pull all that back, have our structure in place, and have all these candidates come to these forums and speak. And if you can't cut the mustard, your ass ain't getting the vote. So political action step number 7, block vote based upon quid pro quo agreements between politicians, their parties, and black people. The strongest weapon in black America's political arsenal is the block vote. Although it is small, it has great political potency because it is the nation's only block vote. No other group, not women, Hispanics, senior citizens, or whites, vote as a block. These voter groups are not loyal to the national political parties and rarely give more than 40 to 45% of their vote to any specific political party. Black people do it because we crazy. Black Americans are the exception. They have the sole discretion of typically aligning 95% of their vote within a single national political party. For instance, now listen to this. From 1870 until the 1930s, nearly 100% of this country's black voters voted as a bloc for the Republican Party. From the late 1940s until the present time, nearly 100% of the community's black votes vote for the Democratic parties, and that's because the parties just flipped. The Republicans became the Democrats, and the Democrats became the Republicans. Over the course of these 40 years, neither of the national political parties nor any white office holders have sponsored a program or public policy strictly and solely designated to address the needs and interests of black Americans. They have never been paid a quid pro quo for their party loyalty and block votes. A block vote and a quid pro quo community go together like ham and eggs. They support and complement each other. But black voters do not demand, and white politicians do not practice quid pro quo with black voters. They are paid for their support and tokenism, even by liberal white politicians who hire a few black staff members, appoint blacks to powerless boards, and socialize with blacks when there is racial discord. Since blacks never seek group-based benefits, how would even a willing politician repay them? Reportedly, President Bill Clinton was amazed that blacks did not demand benefits from their unhinging support of him. However, as black America matures politically. The practice of ignoring the needs of black voters instead of quid pro quo for black America is no longer acceptable. We have more and more people waking up. Now, of course, the bulk of the Democrats and the bulk of the whites and the black people who support the Democrats are trying to demonize the black people who are waking up. Now, the other problem with so-called black people that are waking up is some black people aren't waking up. They're just switching parties, and that's not waking up. You're just taking your allegiance from one party that ain't doing nothing for you to the other party that's not doing nothing for you. And all you black people out there who really think that our answer and our solution and our future is within the Republican Party, you crazy as hell too. What have they done for us? Hell, we're not doing anything for us. Why would any other group do anything for us? Why would somebody do something for a group of people that's not doing something for themselves? Other people are sitting there watching us shoot ourselves in the foot. They're not going to come help us. They're going to continue to watch us shoot ourselves in the foot. Why would I help this group? And we're competing with them. We're the only ones who don't understand that we're in the competition. So action step number 8, mobilize a reparations movement to place back black Americans in a status equal to American Indians with legal claims on the expropriation of labor, property, and life. Black Americans are entitled to monetary compensation from the government and private sector for the myriad of losses that blacks have suffered, especially as a result of their ancestors being denied the fruits of their labor. Similarly, their descendants are due compensation for the compounded and unjust legacies of slavery and Jim Crow semi-slavery. In terms of benefits to Black America, both integration and affirmative action were dead on arrival. However, the structural inequalities and racial monopolies that they should have eliminated remain active and deleterious. The best recourse for Black America is reparations, and it should be made a national issue. It is no longer simply a subject for parlor room discussions, but an absolute necessity. It is the most effective mechanism to deliver long overdue economic justice to Black Americans. Throughout history, our political and legal systems have compensated injured parties, including white indentured servants with freedom dues, Southern slaveholders, monetary reparations, and approximately 1 billion acres of land, Japan billions of dollars in the Point 4 program, Germany billions of dollars in the Marshall Plan, Japanese Americans billions of dollars in the reparations for World War II internment, Jews billions of dollars for the German Holocaust survivors, American Indians billions of dollars in land, cash payments, and public assistance, and now even cigarette smokers billions of dollars in damage rewards. All of these groups received reparations and monetary compensation for personal injuries and unjust enrichment. Black people, victims of the worst Holocaust in history, have not received an apology nor compensation, in part because they failed to mobilize a reparations movement and demand compensation from all nations. From all nations, governments, wealthy families, churches, and corporations that profited from slavery. Although some may be skeptical, Black Americans will be granted reparations. This nation has no other choice but to deliver on this long overdue economic justice to Black Americans. It would be an international embarrassment for this country to espouse democratic principles of fairness and justice and to continue holding Black Americans in the economic ditches created by the laws of the nation. Domestically, should this nation continue to avoid its obligations to Black Americans, it is running the risk of alienating its most loyal and patriotic citizens, Black people. We have to become more serious about the reparations conversation and reparations movement for the government to. Like in California, we did a breakdown on it. California has gotten to the point where they are willing to accept a meeting, 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 to accept a meeting to talk about reparations for Blacks in California, the 1.2 or the $2.3 million that people are supposed to get. Black people, we have to first understand that reparations is more than just a monetary compensation. what reparations should be a redistribution of wealth, land, power, and resources. That's what it should be. That's what it needs to be. Now, we have to have the power to make that happen. We have to have the power to make reparations happen. There's something that these other groups were able to do to get reparations that we haven't figured out. And it's probably working as a group, working as a unit, working as a nation, working as a people. Instead of just saying, hey, we're descendants of slaves, we should get reparations. Hey, you gave all these other groups reparations, we need to get reparations. How do we make them give us reparations? That's what we should be concentrating on. How do you make a group of people who are oppressing you? How do you make them stop oppressing you? Then how do you make them give you reparations for the oppression? So Dr. Anderson is laying out a path that the Native American groups, the path that they took to get reparations. He says they filed a natural rights claim against the land on behalf of their ancestors. Blacks should file a natural law claim against the government's religious and business for death, injury, and unjust enrichment on behalf of the victims of slavery and Jim Crow patronage. Said the Indians sought and received public apologies from state and federal governments. Blacks should seek apologies from all levels of government, religions, and businesses. The Native Americans convinced whites to invest resources to preserve and reinvent Indian culture. Blacks should secure public and private funding for a Black Holocaust and Cultural Museum. The Native Americans had government economists calculate the value of expropriated Native American lands. Blacks should demand that the government calculate the value of expropriated Black labor, deaths, and property. Native Americans drafted their own civilized tribes constitution and formed government councils. Blacks should adopt a national Black empowerment plan and form a political party. The Native Americans declared themselves to be a foreign nation and developed separate communities. Blacks should declare themselves a nation within a nation and rebuild Black communities. Native Americans allowed themselves to be declared domestic dependent nations and wards of the government who needed to be protected under the doctrine of trust. The federal government became responsible for their care and well-being as a poor and powerless people. Blacks should seek to be protected under a similar doctrine of trust that protects and entrusts and entitles them to double benefits and tax exemptions. So once again, even the way that we go about trying to get reparations is not feasible. I disagree with appealing to the morality or saying that white America or America period will feel ashamed for not giving reparations. I don't think they give a damn about how they look on the national stage or on the international stage, because they're going to look the same way they've always looked on the international stage. Remember, they control the narratives. So I do disagree with that part, but I do think that we have to put proper structures in place for us to be able to get what we need politically before we even start to talk about reparations. Why would they give a group of people reparations who are not serious even about being a community of people? I wouldn't. If I'm a part of another group, why am I taking you serious? For what? You're not taking you serious. Make them do what we need them to do. Action step number 9, use electoral voting options to bypass elected officials and political institutions. One of the biggest political failings of Black America over the last half a century is that it has been too quiet. The majority of society began implementing its benign neglect policy in the early 1970s. This public policy, which declared Black Americans as obsolete and abandoned labor force, shifted white society's moral commitments from Blacks to gender, class, ethnic, and language groups. Blacks simply paralyzed by this unexpected shift. With Black leadership leading the shift, then later seeking to ally with the new class minorities that they had created a problem, that seeking to align themselves with the new minorities, a problem arose. In any competitive environment, an individual or group that is non-competitive is sure to become extinct. In any competitive environment, Any individual or group that is non-competitive is sure to become extinct. Black Americans are leaderless for all practical purposes. Black Americans must again become active and force those holding public office to be responsible to the needs and concerns of Black people. We need to initiate more direct actions, whether we exercise electoral voting options, alter consumer patterns, or even use forms of civil disobedience. For example, we use boycotts and civil disobedience reasonably well generations ago. These acts can still grab the public's attention, but they become wasted efforts when there are no tangible goals and follow-up activities. These old tactics would probably be more effective if they were used in combination with some of our voting options and power. There are a number of special voting rights that are tools we can use to accomplish our political will, such as voter referenda, initiatives, recalls, public hearings, selective withdrawal of patronage, lawsuits, and ballot write-ins. We should employ these special electoral devices to counteract laws, public policies, or public office holders who conflict with our interest. The laws regarding special rights vary greatly, but all of them are tools we can use to gain some degree of control over our lawmakers and hold them accountable. Through an initiative, for instance, voters can introduce a law through a referendum. The voters can approve or reject the proposed law. Through a recall, the voters can take an elected official out of office before his term expires. Voters can seek injunctive relief through a lawsuit. A dissatisfied constituency can also affect the business revenue of the soft campaign funds political figures receive from corporate donors. These special rights allow any disenchanted citizens to take direct action against governmental representatives. So this is something Pat and I talked about years ago when we were with the community action plan that we created for our communities, right? A part of that community action plan was holding elected officials accountable for their actions or their inaction. And as a matter of fact, I sat in on a city council meeting. I told y'all about it. I sat in on a city council meeting like 2-3 weeks ago. The Black lady got to go. The Black lady got to go. The Black lady who ran a campaign off of having the interest of the Black community is not working for the interest of the Black community. Matter of fact, the sad thing is that I've seen, not from just this city council, but from past city councils, is the people who don't look like us are the ones who are actually fighting for us. Not the whole council, 1 or 2 people. But the fact that the ones who look like us don't have our best interests, and we put them in these seats. We champion these people. We elected and re-elected these people, and they do not have any interest in making sure that these Black communities are better, because they don't have to. On one hand, they have no interest in helping us. On the other hand, we have nothing in place to hold them accountable. Now, we can get these people out of these seats. Check your local laws, your local jurisdictions, and what's the process of removing an elected official from their seat, and act on that. Get enough people together who are disenchanted by these elected officials, figure out what you need to do to get them out, and act on it. Remember, they need us more than we need them. They are the representatives for us to the government, but we need better representatives. But we need to be a better base, a better group of people. We need the power. So when somebody represents us, they have to represent us properly, or there will be consequences. Political action step number 10. Compete with 2 major political parties by forming a national Black independent party as an alternative voting channel. In national politics, there's a long-held common belief that regardless of how this nation's political parties treat Black American voters, they accept it because they have no alternative. Black voters are unwanted political pawns. For over a century, one political party rejected Blacks while the other national party tolerated their membership. Blacks were spectators whose sole contribution was limited to a swing vote in a close race between white candidates. But contrary to common belief, Black voters do have somewhere to go. They can join the half of this nation's eligible voters who simply refuse to vote. Or Black voters can turn the tables on the two national parties, and instead of waiting to be used, rejected, or tolerated, Blacks can do the rejecting. Black votes may be irrelevant, but if we apply the principles of ethno aggregation, we can create some alternatives. Though a divorce proceeding has yet to be announced, the marriage between the Democratic Party and Black America, which was consummated in the 1940s, is on the rocks. Hey, Democratic Party, we quit you. We have broken up with you. Matter of fact, we've broken up with any political party. Y'all can go to hell. So the Democratic Party has been unfaithful to Black America. Instead of taking care of its home base of loyal Black voters, the Democratic Party downgraded Black rights and took up with every ethnic, class, gender, and language issue group, regardless of their party affiliations. The Democratic Party and Black civil rights leaders brought down an array of minority and women competitors upon the backs of Blacks before they had a chance to catch up from centuries of slavery and Jim Crow segregation. What can the Democratic or Republican parties do for Black people in the 21st century? Contrary to the advice of traditional civil rights liberals who encourage Black voters to stay in a failed marriage, and conservatives who advocate that Blacks divide themselves between the two national parties, thus diluting their voting power, Black voters should reject both options. Instead, Black voters must ethno-aggregate and become totally independent, forcing both parties to count them. Look, we've seen this during the last 2, 3, 4 elections. Especially as we get more and more group of younger people who are coming of age to vote. Remember how they vote, right? Remember, these young people are coming into this political process voting off of popularity and voting off of feelings. And so I remember years ago seeing a number of young Black voters who have decided that they are going to become a part of the Republican Party because of the bullshit that we get from the Democratic Party. But they failed to understand that the Republican Party is just as full of shit as the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party just the one we've been messing with, the one that we've been choosing to mess with. We chose the Democratic Party. They didn't choose us. We chose them, right? But like Dr. Anderson is getting at, Black people choosing to align. Let's say half of Black people choose Democrat, half Black people choose Republicans. Black people have thus divided our power. We don't even vote as a group. There's no group think. There's no group movement. There's no group voting. There's no group progress. But there is group destruction. There is a declining of the group. There is a stagnation of the group. There is the group getting worse and worse and worse. You may not win. If you choose not to be a group, you won't win, but your ass will lose as a group. So political action step 11, initiate a national leadership renaissance for empowerment-oriented Black leadership. Leadership. What a word now. I don't even know what the hell Black leadership means anymore. I know what it's supposed to mean, but what does it actually mean? I don't know. Black America is in the throes of a full-blown leadership crisis just when 36 million Black Americans need leadership the most. Black America is poised to slide into political and economic oblivion as a minority. We are a minority in an increasingly pluralistic and competitive society. This is a position of weakness that Black America has to overcome in order to survive and prosper in the 21st century. Black society must raise up a new and different kind of institutional leadership. This renaissance of leadership must be capable of recognizing the uniqueness of the Black American dilemma, exhibit a strong group identification, and maximize the limited resources of Black people, and totally commit to practicing politics of gaining resources. Serving the self-interest of Blacks would be a challenge to many leading and visible Blacks. Since well before the end of slavery, Black leaders played the role of racial diplomats, interpreting Black America's needs and framing the issues for whites in terms of what is good for everybody. As diplomats, they found it difficult to advocate solely for Blacks. The vacuum in Black leadership is growing in reverse proportion to the deepening socioeconomic crisis of Black America. Though Black America is well on the road to being locked into a permanent underclass by the year 2013. Come back to that. Though Black America is being locked into a permanent underclass by the year 2013, leading Blacks are becoming increasingly irrelevant because they absolutely refuse to practice the politics of resources and race. Now, it is 2023. He said Black America would be locked into a permanent underclass by the year 2013. It is 2023. It is safe to say that we are in effect a minority. We are an underclass, and we most likely have put ourselves in a position to be a permanent underclass. Remember, the Hispanics have passed us in population. The Asians are coming for us in population, but the Asians have passed us in wealth. And I think if the Hispanics have not passed us in wealth, they're right on our ass. What do we think is going to happen for us? What do we think is going to improve for us if we continue to do nothing for ourselves, right? But Black leadership, I can't even say we've had real Black leadership in a while. We've had people who talk a lot. We have talking heads. We don't have leaders. Because leaders actually have a plan for us. Leaders have a destination for us. Leaders have an overall outcome for us. And you should have it laid out, the steps that we should take to get to those desired outcomes. Who's leading us where? Who's leading us to what? Any Black person that's out there talking about their leader, I'm looking at them sideways in the mud. Because all of our leaders, our generals, where are you? Where are we going? Why are we getting worse, leader? Maybe you're just a leader in title and not a leader in reality or a leader in action. Maybe that's just what you call yourself, but that's not what you really are. And the people who follow you, well, we are insane, right? We are the most insane group of people in this country, right? So people will follow somebody. Like, I'm not going to say this person's name because this is not about beefing with nobody, but I'm watching a YouTube channel and the person is talking about a specific leader in the Black community. And they keep making video after video after video after video of all of the foul things this Black person is doing, this so-called leader is doing. But this person who's making these videos calling out the bull that this so-called leader is doing is still telling us why they love this person who's this leader, why they still follow this person, why they still listen to this person. And it's all emotional. And they admit it. It has nothing to do with anything tangible, anything real. It's only emotions. It's only emotions. I'm aligning myself with you because I like what you say, even though I have proof that I presented myself that you are a no good leader. You are, in fact, not a leader. Nobody should be following you. Nobody should be listening to you. But because I agree with some of your ideologies and some of the language that you espouse, it makes me feel good. I will continue to follow you and support you and show you love, even though I can prove that you are destructive to our community. If that's not insane, I don't know what it is. So, political action step number 12, adopt a public code of conduct for group accountability. In politics, the temptation is strong to promise things that cannot be delivered or to sacrifice a constituency group for selfish reasons. Black Americans must devise a group code of conduct, role models, and the means to hold people accountable for how they treat Black people. Elected officials should be the first group of whom Blacks demand accountability. It is especially important for them to hold responsible those Blacks who demonstrate more concern for the broader society and its institutions than for the collective interest of Black people. Listed below are some of the strategies Black groups have employed to hold public figures accountable for doing injury to the group. Denounce Blacks who displayed inappropriate behavior, staged public protest, and labeled them Sambos. Denounce blacks who display inappropriate behavior, stage public protests, and label them Sambos. Sambos should not be protected by any codes of conduct. Ostracize blacks who demonstrated inappropriate behavior and impose social, political, and economic sanctions on them. Publicize the inappropriate behavior. Some community activists circulated flyers and placed pictures of the offending blacks on yard signs, posters, and walls of shame. See, shame is important. Shaming people is important. You want to shame people from conducting a certain behavior that is destructive. Presented Haywood Shepherd's awards to those who practice inappropriate behavior. Haywood Shepherd was a black man who tried to warn the town of Harper's Ferry and John Brown's arrival in town to free black slaves. Brown's raiders killed him, but whites honored Shepherd's with a monument. Shepherd a bitch. Fuck Haywood Shepherd. Yeah, I said it. And any of you Haywood Shepherds out there, any of Haywood Shepherd and what's your boy, the dude who sold out Fred Hampton, fuck him too, right? You Haywood, William O'Neill. William O'Neill ain't nothing but a modern day Haywood Shepherd. Too many black people are willing to sell out our own. Opposed contract awards, jobs, and political appointments or public recognition to those who exhibit inappropriate behavior patterns. Sellouts and people who are destructive to our community should be demonized. Fuck them. Throw their asses away. I don't care how many books they wrote. I don't care how good they speak. I don't care what they wear. I don't care how much they've done for you. I don't care if they cut your grass, save your mama. If they have continuous patterns of inappropriate behavior that is not supportive or conducive to us getting better, improving our lot in life, throw their asses away. I don't give a damn that they black. Throw them away. Why are we holding on to black people that are destructive? Like, all y'all people, free this person, free, no, lock them up and throw away the key, put them under the jail. They need to understand that this behavior is unacceptable. And if you continue this behavior, there will be consequences, dire consequences, treasonous consequences. Any black person whose actions literally work against the best interests of the black community, they are treasonous, and that should be dealt with accordingly. And anybody who disagree with that, you're probably a treasonous person yourself. Whether or not a community adopts any of the above measures, blacks should establish organizations that protect the race and hold members accountable for their behavior. Holding people accountable to the black community will be tough. It is not for the faint of heart. Blacks must develop a pattern of exacting consequences on those who betray or attempt to profit by imposing pain and suffering on other black people. This is the only guaranteed way to stop inappropriate political behavior. There should be dire consequences to turning your back on your community. There should be dire consequences for having bad behavior across the board, not even just in the political realm, but across the board. If your behavior is destructive to the community, your ass need to be outcast. So that was chapter 7, practicing group politics, from page 185 to pages 222. So if you haven't read chapter 7, I went over it, but I encourage you to read the chapter for yourself. 185 to 222. So next video will be our last video on Powernomics. It's chapter 8. It's only 8 chapters. Chapter 8 is from pages 223 to 244. 223 to 244, that is chapter 8, and that will be the conclusion of our review of Powernomics. Then, we move on to our next book. So start thinking about some of the books that you might want us to read. Hey, whatever, put them in the comments. Put them in the comments. You never know. Then we're going to all vote on them. But hey, we're reading this information to use it. Applied knowledge is power. 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 If we don't have practical application across the board on anything that we're doing, we will not get any favorable outcomes. We have to get up, get out, and get something. Stop spending all our time sitting around crying and hoping that white supremacists stop being white supremacists. If you think white people are going to wake up and stop being white supremacists because we want them to, you crazy as hell. I'm Joseph Ward. This is On the Shoulders of Giants. www.ontheshoulders1.com is the website. Like this video. Let's get our likes up. Let's get these views up. Share this video. Put your comments in. Constructive comments. Keep the crazy, dumb stuff to yourself. If it's not a constructive comment, keep it to yourself. Some of you who comment, I don't know what y'all be talking about. So can you reference the point that you're talking about? If you're talking about a specific point in the video, could you reference that? Because you might have you have a response, but I have no idea what you're talking about. Because we're over an hour. I have no idea what you're talking about. So could you link it to whatever you're talking about? That way I can have a proper response to it. Some of the stuff, if it's crazy, you're not gonna get a response. So I do my best to get in there and respond to as much as possible. But I love you all. Let's continue to support this platform and others. And I'll see y'all next time. Make sure you catch the next video coming up. Love you.